Ruthless Aggression.
Ruthless aggression. That wasn't a statement. That was an answer. Everybody remembers what John Cena said when he stood across that ring 25 years ago against an Olympic gold medalist like Kurt Angle. But nobody remembers the question that Kurt Angle had asked him prior, except John Cena. Because that question wouldn't just haunt him for the rest of his life. That question would ask about his identity without the armor. That one question would ask John Cena for 25 years straight.
Who in the hell are you?
Kurt Angle did not ask that question to be dramatic. He did not ask that question to create a moment or a specific debut. He asked that question because in professional wrestling, identity is not optional. It's mandatory. Either you figure yourself out and let the world know, or the world is going to figure it out for you, and it's not going to be pretty. Angle wasn't just another opponent. He was legitimacy incarnate, amateur excellence, discipline, structure, a man whose credibility wasn't built in the ring alone, but etched into real-world history. Standing across from him wasn't a test of toughness. It was a test of understanding. Do you know what this is? Cena's answer sounded confident, powerful, defiant, but it was wrong. Because ruthless aggression wasn't identity, it was an armor. Cena didn't walk into WWE knowing who he was. He walked in knowing he had one chance to not disappear. So he borrowed intensity, borrowed fire, borrowed bravado, and that debut wasn't confidence. It was survival. Angle saw through it immediately. He stripped away the noise and forced Cena to exist inside the craft itself. Timing, positioning, fundamentals, respect for the ring, respect for the work. Angle wasn't interested in Cena's passion. He was interested in whether Cena belonged. And Cena lost in a way that mattered. Because he didn't break. He looked unfinished. And that distinction saved his career. That loss didn't crown John Cena. It bought him time. Time to listen. Time to understand that wrestling doesn't reward confidence alone. It rewards respect for what came before you, for the craft itself, for the grind that humbles everyone eventually. This was the first lesson of Cena's career. Respect. The months that followed weren't glamorous. No rocket strapped to his back, no clear direction, no immediate stardom. WWE didn't owe him patience. And they weren't giving it. So Cena did something dangerous. He spoke. Not scripted, not safe, not focus group, freestyles, insults, humor that felt raw, sometimes awkward, sometimes corny, but undeniably alive. A moment of rapping with the boys at the back of the bus at that time where his job was in danger had caught the boss's daughter's eyes. And born was the doctor of thugonomics. This wasn't a character born from creative genius. It was desperation with rhythm. This wasn't Cena finding himself. This was Cena grabbing something before the door closed. Cena had survived Kurt Angle's test, but he hadn't fully passed it yet. He respected the ring enough to endure, but not enough to understand it fully. He was still performing an answer instead of living one. And that's the tragedy of early stage John Cena. He didn't fail, he survived. But survival is not arrival. By the time John Cena stumbled across the Doctor of Thugonomics era, he was no longer invisible, and that matters. This version of Cena, loud, expressive, a little reckless, was the closest he came early on to something resembling the truth. Not polish, not refinement, truth. Because for the first time, he wasn't borrowing intensity, he was speaking in his own voice, rough edges and all. This wasn't confidence yet, but this was honesty. And honesty is dangerous in a system that prefers predictability. And that's where JBL enters the story. Before the rivalry even began, JBL represented the next lesson that John Cena had to learn, and that was perseverance. Not perseverance in matches, but perseverance in belief. The fact that you can go out there in front of thousands of people and still be yourself, persevere through the boos, the hate, even when the room turns cold, that was the lesson that JBL represented for Cena. JBL was not chaos. He was order weaponized, a self-appointed gatekeeper who believed deeply in hierarchy. in knowing your place, in understanding that championships weren't won by passion but by surviving the people who didn't want you there. JBL didn't see John Cena as a rival. He saw him as an inconvenience, and that's worse. Because you can fight hatred, but you can't fight dismissal. Every word that JBL spoke was designed to make Cena feel small. JBL wasn't attempting to beat John Cena with violence. He was trying to beat John Cena with psychological warfare. He wanted John Cena to feel small. He wanted John Cena to feel the fact that he is a fad, a joke, who got lucky and is eventually just a placeholder for someone real to step in and take everything away from him. Cena was still new enough to believe that effort guaranteed acceptance. JBL existed to kill that idea. He represented the harsh truth of WWE. Talent gets you noticed, but belief keeps you alive. And JBL did everything he could to try to slip that belief away. He mocked Cena's appearance, his intelligence, his legitimacy. He treated the Doctor of Thugonomics like a child playing wrestler while adults ran the company. Every promo was an attempt to reframe John Cena's success as a mistake. But here's the part that people forget. It worked for a while. Cena ended up realizing something brutal. Approval is conditional and applause is temporary. And the moment that you start relying on both and they stop, you're the one who disappears. JBL taught Cena that belief in yourself matters more than approval from anyone else, including the audience, including the locker room, and including the company itself. Beating JBL wasn't catharsis. It was confirmation. Confirmation that not only Cena can endure pain and punishment, but he could also endure isolation. That he could stand in the center of a storm with half the building wanting him gone and still hold his guard. And this is where Cena's philosophy was formed. Not confidence, not ego, but stubborn belief. Stubborn belief in his abilities, in himself, in who he is as a person. And that stubborn belief is exactly the thing that would take him to the top. But it would also trap him there. Because perseverance, when overlearned, becomes rigidity. And when survival becomes identity, you stop questioning whether you're still growing. Cena won the title. He held it. He carried the company into a new era, and WWE made a choice. They chose him. They crowned him the face. And that's when everything changed. Because the moment John Cena became the face of the company, the audience stopped seeing a man and started seeing a symbol. And symbols, they don't get to be complex. They just get to be consistent. This is where the new phase begins. This is where Super Cena is born. Before the cash-in, before the championships, before the chaos, Edge represented the next lesson that John Cena had to learn. Adaptability. Edge wasn't just another challenger, he was a philosophy that directly opposed John Cena's worldview. Where Cena believed effort earned reward, Edge believed reward went to those who understood timing. Where Cena trusted structure, Edge exploited loopholes. Edge did not fight fair, and he did not care. And that frightened John Cena. Because Edge exposed something that John Cena didn't want to hear. The system that he believed in so much could be bent, manipulated, turned inside out by somebody who understood that system so much better than Cena ever did. Edge forced John Cena to adapt, not by outpowering him, but by outsmarting him. Cash-ins, opportunism, moments stolen instead of earned. He showed John Cena that the strongest doesn't always win, but the smartest will always win. And Cena had to adapt that, and fast. In adapting, Cena became unstoppable, and in adapting, he began to disappear. Because every adjustment shaved away something human. Every evolution made him feel more efficient and less expressive. The louder the boos grew, the harder Cena doubled down on being unshakable. He smiled wider, he saluted longer, he became dependable. Super Cena wasn't arrogance. It was obligation. The face of the company doesn't get to be uncertain. He doesn't get to experiment. He doesn't get to listen to the crowd when the crowd doesn't know what it wants. The audience turned not because Cena was bad, but because he stopped feeling real. He became a constant in a world that craved change. The same perseverance that saved him against JBL now worked against him. He refused to bend emotionally because bending once felt like weakness. Edge taught Cena adaptability, but Cena adapted only enough to win, not enough to evolve. And somewhere in the middle of all of that success, the question returned. Who the hell are you? Cena had learned respect, he had learned perseverance, he had learned adaptability. But he still hadn't learned the answer. Because every single lesson that he was taught by his rivals, it made him stronger, yes, but it also pushed him further away from the answer. John Cena became everything that he could except John Cena. John Cena didn't break in 2009. That's the important part. Because by then, breaking would have been easier. And this is where Randy Orton enters the story. Not as a villain, not as a rival in the traditional sense, but as a mirror. Before the feud had even started or the rivalry even mattered, there was this one lesson that John Cena has always drifted apart from, and that was taught to him by none other than Randy Orton. See, Randy Orton is not just a rival in John Cena's historic career. Randy Orton is the shadow version of John Cena. When John Cena pushes ahead, Orton drifts. When John Cena works out on hustle, loyalty, and respect, Orton cheats and uses his smooth talents to get forward in life. When John Cena thinks that the only way to get forward in life is through perseverance, Orton outsmarts him again. And the cruel fact is that Randy Orton, at the end of the day, is just as gifted as John Cena. And that's what bothered him. Randy Orton could have taken the harder road. He chose not to. He leaned into entitlement, into shortcuts, into being the man who didn't apologize for wanting things easy, and somehow he still thrived. Standing across from Orton, Cena is forced to confront something uncomfortable. What if suffering isn't the only way? Because Orton doesn't look crushed by expectations, he looks unbothered by them. He doesn't carry the company, he lets it sit where it falls. He doesn't smile through the boos, he weaponizes them. Cena does the opposite. That's the paradox of this era. John Cena becomes more reliable than ever and more hated than ever. He's booed while carrying the company. Cena doesn't lash out, Cena doesn't complain, he doesn't cry about it, he keeps moving forward. Because never give up stopped being a mantra, and it became an armor for him. Because if any day John Cena told him that he's had enough and he's crumbling under the pressure and he gave up, that would crumble the whole infrastructure of this entire company. Because at the end of the day, John Cena had transformed from a man to an idea. And ideas don't get to be tired. Randy Orton teaches Cena this lesson by contrast, not confrontation. Orton shows him what happens when you don't carry the burden, when you let the audience hate you openly, when you choose yourself first. Orton becomes the man Cena refuses to be, and in doing so exposes the loneliness of John Cena's path. Strength stops being heroic here, and it becomes isolating. And that isolation is the real cost. Cena doesn't complain, he doesn't explain, he just keeps going, but something inside of him shifts. The smile stiffens, the promos get tighter, the answers more rehearsed. The mask is no longer protection, it's permanent. And then comes the man who finally says it out loud. CM Punk. Punk doesn't attack John Cena's wrestling, he attacks his identity. And that's the key, because the lesson that CM Punk represents for John Cena is the one lesson that John Cena has always thought that he wanted to learn but could never learn it from anybody else. And that's where CM Punk comes into play. The lesson that I'm of course talking about is authenticity. Not honesty, not effort, but authenticity. Punk looks at Cena and doesn't see a hero. He sees a corporate champion, a chosen one, a safe option wrapped in sincerity, a man who believes what he says but maybe hasn't questioned why he says it in years. Punk doesn't challenge John Cena's strength. He challenges his truth. Every word Punk speaks cuts through the armor. He doesn't argue with Cena's accomplishments. He reframes them. He suggests that Cena didn't choose this role, it was chosen for him. That Cena didn't become the face, he was installed as one. And for the first time, Cena doesn't have an answer, not a real one. He responds with confidence, with conviction, with the same lies that have carried him through every storm before. But something's different. This time, the crowd doesn't just boo. They listen. Because Punk isn't saying what they feel about Cena's booking. He's saying what they feel about Cena himself. That maybe the mask stayed on too long. That maybe the man underneath forgot where performance ended. That maybe never give up stopped being belief and started being obligation. And this is where doubt entered the story. Not doubt about John Cena's in-ring abilities or mic skill abilities, but doubt about John Cena's authenticity. And that doubt could hurt John Cena more than any other loss ever could. Because losses can be overcome. Identity crisis can't be pinned. Punk forces Cena to look inward for the first time in years, to question whether perseverance turned into denial, whether strength became avoidance, or whether the burden he carried was still his to carry or something he inherited and never put down. This isn't the end of the search. And this is the first time that John Cena realizes in his life that he might be answering Kurt Angle's question with somebody else's word. And that's where the mask cracks. It doesn't slip yet, but there's a little crack that you can see in that mask now. Who the hell are you? And in 25 years, John Cena still doesn't know. By 2012, John Cena had everything. Titles, main events, longevity, cultural reach, a generation of kids who believed in him without the irony, a generation of adults who booed him out of habit. He had become unavoidable, indestructible, permanent. And that permanence scared him, because somewhere along the way the question changed. It was no longer who the hell are you? It became what happens when you're not enough anymore. That fear is what brought The Rock back into his life. Before the match, before the promos, before the mainstream attention, there was one lesson that John Cena had coming for a very, very long time that The Rock represented. And that was humility. The Rock was everything that Cena wasn't, and Cena was everything The Rock wasn't trying to think about. Effortless charisma, natural authority, a presence that didn't need an explanation or reinforcement. The Rock didn't grind his way to relevance. He arrived, conquered, left, and returned without asking permission. Standing across from him, John Cena didn't see a rival. He saw a standard. And instead of accepting that standard, he tried to replace it. And that's what cost him at WrestleMania 28. Instead of just accepting the difference between him and The Rock and choosing the path of two different legacies, John Cena tried to mimic him. John Cena tried to imitate him. And for the first time in his life, he abandoned his own language. He borrowed cadence, borrowed posture, borrowed bravado. He tried to match The Rock's aura instead of trusting his own gravity. And in that final moment, it all collapsed. Cena used the people's elbow, not as mockery, as desperation. The move wasn't disrespect, it was identity theft. It was Cena reaching out for a shortcut for greatness instead of accepting the one he already had built. And it cost him everything. Because humility isn't learned through dominance, it's learned through failure. This loss didn't break John Cena, but it definitely humbled him. And for the first time since a decade ago when Kurt Angle asked that question to him, John Cena realized something. That there are levels to this. And not every legacy is yours to inherit. This loss broke the cycle. It ended the need to chase replacement greatness. Cena didn't stop working hard after this, but he stopped pretending he could be someone else. And that made all the difference. Bray Wyatt. Cena wasn't looking for redemption, he was looking for understanding. This is where acceptance enters the story. And no one could teach it better than Bray Wyatt. This wasn't a rivalry, it wasn't a feud, it wasn't even wrestling, it was reckoning. It asked whether Cena could face himself without flinching. And for the first time in his career, Cena didn't fight back, because there was nothing left to punch. Bray didn't attack John Cena's body, he attacked his history. Every persona Cena ever wore appeared like a ghost. Every choice, every shortcut, every time Cena buried someone without realizing it, every time he chose survival over empathy, stability over risk, safety over evolution. This wasn't an indictment. This was a mirror. Cena saw the casualties of his perseverance, the people who never got back up when he did, the moments where never give up became someone else had to. The funhouse stripped away the applause, the boos, the titles, the slogans. What remained wasn't a hero or a villain. It was a man. So completely that he lost track of what it cost others. And he let it happen. He didn't kick out. He didn't rally. He didn't overcome. He allowed himself to be erased. Not as punishment, as release. Because acceptance isn't about forgiveness. It's about acknowledgement. Cena didn't need to win that night. He just needed to stop running. The Firefly Funhouse match wasn't the end of the question. And it wasn't the answer either. It made John Cena realize that you don't have to run towards the answer to find it. Maybe the answer could be inside you, all along. It's discovered when you stop pretending that you're unbreakable. Humility taught him that legacy cannot be replaced. Acceptance taught him that he doesn't need to outrun his past. And somewhere between those two lessons, the question lost its power. Not because it was answered, but because John Cena had finally become comfortable not needing to answer it at all. By 2016, John Cena no longer felt like the future. That sentence alone would have sounded impossible a decade earlier. For years, John Cena was the gravity. He was the ecosystem. Everything revolved around him. Championships changed hands because of him. Storylines were developed because of him. WrestleMania main events could not be possible without John Cena inside them. Super Cena wasn't just booking, it was a whole ecosystem of the WWE. But slowly, something changed. Not violently, not with one precise blow, but with time. Because time eventually takes everybody away. And this time, it was Super Cena's time. This is where AJ Styles enters the story. Not as a villain, not even as a threat, but as a revelation. Before the bell ever rang, AJ represented the lesson Cena thought he would never had to learn. Realization. Realization is when you stop fighting what's happening and finally understand why. AJ Styles didn't come into WWE to mock John Cena. He didn't come to WWE to challenge John Cena. He came to WWE to show John Cena that with time, everything evolves. The fans' taste evolves, the wrestling style evolves, the perception of wrestlers evolve. And AJ Styles was the evolution of John Cena. John Cena was no longer the center of attention. Standing across from AJ, Cena wasn't facing chaos like Edge or defiance like Punk or reflection like Orton. He was facing inevitability. AJ was smoother, faster, sharper, a wrestler shaped by a different era, a different philosophy, a different rhythm. He didn't need to prove he belonged. He didn't need to announce his arrival. He just wrestled. And that was enough. Cena lost. And the loss felt different. Not shocking, not humiliating, not tragic. Honest. Because this wasn't Cena failing to rise. This was Cena understanding that the climb was over. That realization doesn't come with anger. It doesn't come with bitterness. It comes with clarity. And clarity can be devastating if you're not ready for it. John Cena wasn't weak, he wasn't washed, he wasn't past his prime. But for the first time in a very long time, John Cena was not Superman. Because he was a human standing in the middle of a ring. And that is the time where Super Cena started to slip away. Not with boos, not with a heel turn, not with resentment, with awareness. The awareness that you don't need to be everything forever to have been something meaningful. The awareness that dominance has a shelf life, and that doesn't invalidate what came before it. AJ Styles didn't end John Cena. He showed him where the ending was. And for the first time, Cena didn't fight it.
I would at least like to say, at the end of the day, the amount of effort I put into this, I can be in that small group of people that when all the guys get around the round table and they start talking about the greatest of all time, certain names come up. And I want to be one of those names.
By the time 2023 arrived, John Cena had already stepped away in all the ways that mattered. Movies, absences, short returns, one-off matches. He wasn't clinging anymore. He wasn't chasing relevance. He wasn't trying to reclaim that spotlight. He was visiting it. And then came the moment that quietly rewrote his entire career. Monday Night Raw, 20 years of John Cena. And for the first time, WWE didn't do a celebration for the sake of a celebration. There was no match, there was no rivalries performed in this. There was nothing written. And for the first time ever, something profound happened. Because John Cena was not announced as the face that runs the place or the franchise. He was announced as the greatest of all time. That moniker was something that John Cena had earned over the past years. He had earned through resilience, through hard work, through perseverance, through adaptability, through reflection, through hustle, loyalty, and respect. And for the first time, John Cena was not looking forward. He didn't talk about what was next. He didn't tease another return. He didn't promise one last chapter. He looked back at the kid who answered Kurt Angle with borrowed aggression, at the man who survived JBL's doubt, at the champion who adapted against Edge, at the burdened hero who absorbed the booze and torture against Orton, at the shaken figure Punk exposed, at the humbled man who failed against The Rock, at the broken soul Bray dismantled, at the aware veteran AJ outpaced. And then it all connected, the lessons that he had learned in the last 20 years. John Cena realized something that wrestlers often don't hear until they're dead. John Cena was bigger than his profession, and he realized it. The character didn't succeed at wrestling. The character outlived its job, its purpose. Cena didn't transcend WWE by abandoning it. He transcended it by embodying something so consistent, so committed, so durable that it escaped the ring entirely. Kids didn't just cheer John Cena. They believed in him. Adults didn't just boo him. They reacted to what he represented. He became a constant in a business that constantly evolves and changes. And that's when the question that Kurt Angle had asked decades ago would lose all its teeth. John Cena didn't answer it with a slogan. He didn't answer it with a heel turn. He didn't answer it with one last title reign. He answered it by standing still and letting the world speak back. And as the world said his name, not as a chant, not as a protest, not as noise, as recognition. John Cena didn't spend 25 years trying to find himself. John Cena spent 25 years becoming something larger than he needed to. And when he finally realized that, he arrived. John Cena did not come back in 2025 to win anything. That alone told you everything. For the first time in his career, John Cena entered WWE ring without hunger. Not the fake humility kind, not the I'm happy to be here PR version. Real hunger that had left him years ago. Sometimes between realizing his time had passed and accepting that it didn't need to be reclaimed. What remained was intention. And intention is far more dangerous than ambition. Because ambition asks, what can I take? But intention asks, what can I give back to the business? And that's where Cody Rhodes enters the fray. Not as a rival, not as a student, but as a reflection. A different kind to Randy Orton and CM Punk and The Rock. Cody represented the future that the fans and the company alike both trusted to take brass knuckles, to become the North Star of the industry. And John Cena immediately saw that. Cena wasn't competing anymore, he was protecting a spot. He wasn't defending a throne, he was guarding a door and deciding when to open it. For decades, Cena had been the door. Cody Rhodes didn't need Cena's rub. He had already survived exile, rejection, reinvention, humiliation, and rebirth. Cena had once been the chosen one. Cody was the self-made one. That difference shaped everything. There was no rivalry because rivalries exist when both sides want the same thing. Cena didn't want the future. He wanted it to be handled correctly. So he didn't fight Cody for the spotlight. He fought Cody as a litmus test to find out if Cody can finally be the man who can handle the keys to the door from today. That's transition. Not clinging, not overshadowing, not stealing moments, just moving aside with dignity. Legacy isn't built by staying forever. Legacy is built by understanding when your presence is taking more away than giving back. And John Cena realized that. Cody wasn't replacing him. Cody was continuing something. And that's the difference between a successor and a clone. John Cena never wanted a clone. Because he knew he had seen enough. He knows what happens when you try to replace icons in the industry. And Cody Rhodes wasn't trying to chase what John Cena was. Cody Rhodes was trying to become something entirely different while representing the core values of John Cena, molding them into something that Cody truly believes. And that is what John Cena realized too. And he respected it. The lesson of legacy isn't about winning one last time. It's about understanding what your wins mean once you're gone. Cena's greatest contribution wasn't the championships. It wasn't the main events. It wasn't even the brand. It was stability. For over a decade, WWE could rely on him to be the constant in a volatile business. When the product was bad, Cena carried it. When the crowd rejected him, he absorbed it. When the company needed a face, he smiled. When it needed a shield, he stood in front. That kind of reliability isn't glamorous, but it's sacrificial. And sacrifices don't demand applause. They demand succession. Cody represented that succession done right. Not rushed, not forced, not corporate manufactured. Earned. And in stepping aside, Cena answered the question that had followed him from 2002. Not with words, but with action.
Who in the hell are you?
John Cena wasn't the future anymore, but he was the foundation that made it all possible. And that's the rarest of them all. John Cena never felt larger than life. That's the part people never know how to articulate, but they feel it instinctively. When he walked out, it wasn't like watching a myth descend from the heavens. It felt closer to routine, familiar, almost comforting. Like water is wet, like fire is hot, and like John Cena is on TV. Not spectacular in the way legends are usually framed, not mystical, not untouchable, just present, constant, reliable to the point where you stop noticing how rare that kind of consistency actually is. And that's why his ending matters more than his beginning. He accepted being the question that had already been solved. For 25 years, the WWE Universe and wrestling fans all across the world argued about John Cena like he was an abstract idea instead of a man. They doubted his wins, his losses, his refusal to turn heel, his refusal to give up on his identity, his refusal to give up on hustle, loyalty, and respect. But nobody ever asked John Cena what it must feel like to be John Cena. To go everywhere, to be loved by millions, to be hated by millions more, but truly, nobody ever seeing you. To be the most reliable man in an industry that is built entirely on chaos and be punished for that reliability? When Cena walked out, it didn't feel special because it felt normal. That's the paradox of true presence. When something is always there, you stop recognizing its weight. You stop seeing the labor behind it. You stop appreciating the sacrifice. People talk about Super Cena like it was a power fantasy, like it was indulgence, like it was ego. But Super Cena wasn't about domination. It was about survival. It was about being strong enough to carry the business even when the business was actively rejecting you. Imagine being booed while doing everything right. Imagine being booed while doing everything that you could for the company and for the fans alike. Imagine smiling through all of that. That is discipline, and discipline is a lonely path. Cena didn't feel larger than life because he didn't want to escape humanity. He leaned into it, he never hid behind the mystique, he never demanded reverence, he showed you who he was every single week whether you liked him or not. That's why he became routine. And routine is underrated because routine is invisible. You don't miss water until you feel thirsty. You don't miss fire until you feel cold. And you don't miss consistency until chaos arrives. John Cena was infrastructure. And you don't miss infrastructure until the whole building collapses on your face. When Cena started to leave, not abruptly but gradually, the absence didn't hit all at once. It crept in quietly. The show felt emptier, the center felt softer, the gravity shifted, and people didn't know how to name that feeling. They just knew something was missing. He believed openly, and belief, when exposed, is vulnerable. That vulnerability made him easy to hate, but it also made him irreplaceable. After 25 years, John Cena didn't leave behind an empty throne. He left behind a blueprint, not for superstardom, but for resilience and endurance. His final answer wasn't dramatic. It wasn't revolutionary. It was quiet. He didn't reinvent himself in the end. He stripped everything away. The slogans, the colors, the archetypes, the armor. What remained was a man who finally understood that he didn't need to be anything else. He didn't need to be a Eminem type rapper. He didn't need to be a Superman. He didn't need to be a neon pop colored Make-A-Wish icon. He just needed to be John Cena. And that might be the most radical thing that he ever did. Because in an industry that is built on reinvention, he chose acceptance. In an industry that is built on exaggeration, he decided to end with honesty. In a world built on spectacle, he gave closure. Sometimes the most important people in your life aren't the ones who arrive with fireworks. They're the ones who stay. They're the ones who show up when it's boring, when it's uncool, when it's thankless. And they're the ones who matter the most. They're the ones who become part of the background, not because they lack value, but because they're foundational. John Cena was foundational. And when you look back at his career, not through highlight reels, not through titles, not through crowd reactions, but through time itself, a different truth emerges. He wasn't trying to be remembered. He was trying to be useful. And usefulness doesn't demand applause. It demands commitment. For 25 years, John Cena committed to the job, to the audience, to the idea that effort matters even when it isn't rewarded immediately. That's why his ending doesn't need a spectacle. It needed recognition. And maybe that's the real answer to Kurt Angle's question. Who the hell are you? He wasn't the future. He wasn't the rebellion. He wasn't the myth. He was the constant. The man you didn't always love. The man you didn't always want. But the man who was always there for you. For 25 years, John Cena tried to find an answer to a question. And at the end of his illustrious career, he found it. And instead of shouting the answer out, he chose to live it. Just John Cena.